Hello, my name is Melissa Jarrett. I'm an Indiana State University nursing student. I have prepared a presentation on emergency preparedness, formulation of a community response for Texas disabled population during below freezing weather conditions. And this is a review of the Texas winter storm of February 2021. Before proceeding into the presentation, please take the time to utilize the link below to test your knowledge with a pre-test. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. Learning objectives for the presentation are as follows. We're going to define community emergency preparedness, identify factors that make disabled residents a population at risk during severe weather, list community agencies that are essential in community emergency preparedness, identify essential community functions in the population at risk, list recommendations for community emergency preparedness for the population at risk, and identify resources for the population at risk in Texas. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Benjamin Franklin. What is community emergency preparedness? Community preparedness is the community-wide effort to provide citizens and residents with the information, training, and resources they need to prepare in advance of a disaster or crisis that may affect the region they live in. Preparing your community for an emergency is a collaborative effort between residents, emergency management teams, local authorities, and governments. If everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. Henry Ford. In February of 2021, Texas faced a winter storm that they were wholly unprepared for approximately 3 to 4 days, depending upon the region of Texas. Many of its residents were without utilities, were stuck in their homes, and had very limited resources and/or transportation. Disabled residents were among the hardest hit. Approximately 3.4 million Texas residents, or 11.7%, have a disability according to the 2019 data from the Office of the Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Individuals with disabilities were forced to live without needed support, to risk dangerous travel conditions to reach hospital emergency rooms, to access power for essential medical equipment, and to overcome many other obstacles, according to the Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities. So what makes disabled residents a population at risk during severe weather conditions? They often have limited mobility and may require assistance to leave their homes. They often require use of 24/7 electricity for medical equipment. They often do not have safe transportation to reach community resources during severe weather. Examples include access to hospitals, pharmacies, food, and alternate shelter. And lack of preparedness in providing life-sustaining medications, food, heat, medical equipment, access to emergency services, etc., can lead to further injury and even death in this population. Your community agencies that provide services to your population at risk during severe weather are sorted into the following groups. Emergency management teams consist of emergency medical services, fire and rescue, hospitals, clinics, pharmacies. Your government can be your city elected officials and your state elected officials. Your local authority, of course, is going to be your city police department, your county sheriff's office, and even your courts. And then, of course, your residents and your volunteers can be anything from your shelters for homeless and volunteers, food pantry and food banks, grocery and retail stores, animal shelters, or schools and child care services. What do community agencies provide for the population at risk? Your emergency management teams are responsible for all delivery of medical services during crisis, provide emergency transportation and rescue, provide medical equipment and medications, provide support to local authorities with response to accident, illness, or injury of residents, provide essential staff 24/7 for continued care regardless of conditions, and provide safe, evidence-based care with limited resources for all healthcare needs. Your government is responsible for designation of resources and coordination of distribution of those resources, organize efforts for restoration of services, implements the use of state military for support of communities when necessary. If resources are not available locally, they will outsource for needs, and is responsible for determining when and if community demand surpasses supply. They can then request federal assistance during times of crisis or disaster. Your local authorities are responsible for maintaining the law during crisis while responding to coordinated efforts with emergency management teams for safety of residents, assist with emergency transportation for medical services and/or delivery of resources, responsible for maintaining safety and security of all community resources regardless of conditions, and provides essential staff for community response and assistance 24/7 during a crisis or disaster. Your residents and volunteers are responsible for providing alternate forms of shelter for those either without a home or without essential utilities to maintain activities of daily living, provide meals and food for communities through donation and in coordination with local, state, and federal resources. If available, will provide care for children, provide shelters or housing for animals where available, and volunteers will assist with transportation that is non-emergent when available. How can we ensure community emergency preparedness for disabled residents in Texas? We can encourage residents to register with the local public utilities to be kept up to date and be protected from undue interruptions to services like electricity and water. We can encourage residents to register for State of Texas Emergency Assistant Registry. This provides emergency planners with a list of community residents that have additional or critical needs. Encourage residents to have an emergency kit on hand at all times. Instruct residents to have a list of phone numbers for all local agencies. Instruct residents to know your neighbors and who you can reach out to for assistance if you know severe weather is a possibility. Encourage residents to know the condition of the roads before attempting to drive. And if possible, encourage residents to store perishable items, water, and medications for at least 7 days at all times. And assist residents to coordinate with family and friends, if applicable, about safe evacuation locations and routes. FEMA's Get Ready program actually has a list of the basic emergency supply kit that is recommended to keep on hand at all times, as well as a recommended additional list of items that might be needed during a crisis or disaster. Additional resources and emergency preparedness for disabled residents are as follows. The Public Utilities Commission actually recommends that all disabled and chronically ill residents fill out the application for chronic condition and critical care residential customer status forms. These are available on the websites, and will actually place the patients or the residents on a list and hopefully negate any undue interruptions of service. The State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry, of course, will provide community emergency preparedness leaders with a list of any residents that may require additional assistance. FEMA Disaster Assistance has several links to websites that provide additional information and assistance. State Warming Center's program for Texas actually provides a list of all shelters that actually have heat and can provide a list at any time by simply clicking on the link listed below. And then, of course, you have your directory of community resources for people with disabilities. At this time, I'm going to ask that you utilize the link found below to assess your comprehension of the education provided by completing a post-test. You have reached the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. A list of references has been provided for your use if necessary. Again, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.